continuing education series on addendums. This is part 2. We're briefly going to go through them as fast as we possibly can. We left out the as is, so we're going to move on to our next one. And that one is the right to inspect and the right to cancel, basically stating that you, the buyer, or your buyer has a certain amount of time to inspect the property and has the right to cancel as he deems necessary. Letter M is defective drywall. This is normally from properties that were built in 2005 to 2008. And in the state of Florida, we had a defective drywall, which is also called Chinese drywall. You have a time to inspect the property, and if there's anything over $500, you can cancel the contract. So this is one that you might use for those properties that were built between 05 and 08. We move on to the coastal construction control line. This is the CCCL. Just read up on that. That's if you have a property that's on the coastal line. It's not used very often. Insulation disclosure, letter O. It's to disclose what kind of insulation, what type, and what thickness was used on the property. This is probably for new construction or a house that has been repaired. So they want to disclose what insulation. Your lead-based pre-1978 housing is used for all properties prior to 1978. It just tells the buyer whether the seller knows of any lead-based contamination, and if you as the buyer have received a pamphlet explaining on the effects of lead-based. So everybody initials where they have to. Seller signs and the buyer signs. Selling and listing agents also sign. Housing for older persons, that's letter Q. It's self-explanatory if the property is going to be used for housing of older persons. We go to rezoning contingency. This is if the buyer needs to purchase the property and rezone it for a specific reason. And this will give you the time frame in which he needs to apply and when will the closing be after he gets the approval of the zoning. Lease purchase / lease option. If the property is going to be leased with a purchase option, you would fill this out. And now we continue with letter T, pre-closing occupancy by the buyer. This is one that I don't see very often, but it's if the buyer wants to occupy the property prior to closing. These are the agreements that will be put forth. Post-closing occupancy by the seller. Now this I have seen a lot, where the buyer purchased the property, closes it on a specific date, and the seller says, can I stay for another 2 months? They would fill this one out. We move on to the next one. Sale of buyer's property. Now this is one that most sellers do not want to get a contract with because they want to sell their property and not be contingent on the buyer selling his. But if the buyer needs to sell his to buy that one, this is one that they would use. This happens a lot when a property is an expensive property and your buyer has a lot of equity in the other home, and it's to the benefit of the seller to wait that out. So you would fill this one out. Backup contract is self-explanatory. If the property is on a pending sale or basically a pending sale, you would do a backup contract if you are next in line. Kick-out clause, that's self-explanatory, and if your seller needs an attorney for approval would be why. So right now we've covered most of your addendums. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and if you have any questions, you could always reach us at our office at 305-598-5488. Thank you very much.